Hi, I'm Jamie Bacero, and I'm here to have my report number 3 in statistics about moderation and mediation models. So first, we have here moderation. It is a way of checking whether the third variable influences the strength or direction of the relationship between the independent and dependent variable. It raises the question, when does one variable influence another? So as we proceed with the presentation, I will be explaining further what moderation is, what is the third variable that we're talking about, what is the relationship between the variables, and also the difference between the moderation and mediation. Now we have here the study. A group of undergraduates from De La Salle University are interested whether the relationship between the psychological climate in a workplace if a fresh graduate receives and their personal accomplishment is influenced by their work engagement. So now I will be showing the moderation graph that we have here. So we have two graphs. The left side shows a simple graph that I made, which further explain what moderation is, and we will be identifying each variables that I will show later on. And on the right side, we have here a line graph that represents the result of this study conducted by the undergraduate DLSU students. So now, we're going to identify the variable. So here we have the x variable, and are also known as the independent variable, the y variable, which is also called the dependent variable, and lastly, at the middle, we have here the z variable, or the third variable that I mentioned a while ago, and this is called the moderator. Now you might be asking, what is a moderator and why is it at the middle of the independent variable and the dependent variable? To simply explain it, moderation tests when an effect occurs. So we test whether the z variable influences the relationship between IV and the DV, and it also tests whether the z variable affects the direction where the IV and the DV are going. It also tests for any interactions that may or may not affect the relationships between X and Y. Now, for the next graph, we have here line graph, the result from the study. So in the x-axis, it is divided into three, namely low, medium, and high. It represents the psychological climate of, um, of the fresh graduate workers. And on the y-axis, we have here the personal accomplishment, while the low engaged and the high engaged is what the z variable is, or also the moderator. Now, the question here is, does work engagement moderate the personal accomplishment of each worker caused by the psychological climate in the workplace? And also, as we can see here from the graph, the low engagement, which is the blue colored line, shows a decrease. We can say that the low engagement decreases. So it's going down. It decreases, while the medium and high psychological climate do not differ significantly in the DV. And you can see that it is in a flat line position. It doesn't go downwards or upwards. It's just linear rather. On the other hand, there is an increased high engagement here on the red colored line. So there is a increase, so it's going upwards. It from medium to high, while the low and medium are also on a flat line position. It does not differ significantly in the dependent variable. At different levels of work engagement, the relationship between personal accomplishment and psychological climate is indeed different. And in conclusion, we can say that the engagement is this low and high engagement are moderating between psychological climate and personal accomplishment. So now that we're done with moderation, we can now proceed with mediation. So what is mediation? It explains the relationship between the independent variable and why such exists. Mediation carries out an effect, while moderation raises the question when, mediation, on the other hand, raises the question how does one variable influence another and why does one variable influence another. So I'll present a study here. A study conducted by the Department of Linguistics showed that children from grades 1 to 3 are suffering from language deficit, which leads to lower self-esteem as a result of shyness. To further visualize mediation, I'm going to show a mediation graph. We have here the mediation graph. So you can see we have here 3 variables and we're going to identify which one is which. So we have here language deficit, which is the IV, or we can call it the predictor. And we have self-esteem, which is identified as the DV, or the outcome. Self-esteem is a dependent variable or the outcome of the study. While shyness is at the middle, so it's the mediator. Now, in the perfect mediation, an independent variable leads to some kind of change to the mediator variable, which then leads to a change in the dependent variable. So in short, the mediation model suggests that influence is through another variable. So we can say that the shyness influences the children's self-esteem. Because of the mediator, we can say that the shyness influences a child's self-esteem. Take note that each path, we're going to identify the path that I mentioned. So from the predictor to the mediator, we have here the path A. From mediator to the outcome, we have path B. And lastly, from the predictor to the outcome, we have here the path C. So it's important to note that each path must be significant. It should be presented from the predictor variable to the outcome, representing different effects, which are direct effect, indirect effect, and total effect. So to further explain what are these effects, so the direct effect is the effect that the predictor, language deficit, has on the outcome, which is the self-esteem. So we can say that these two are the direct effect. While the indirect effect, it uses the mediator. So the effect that the predictor has on the outcome that can be explained through the mediator. So from the language deficit to shyness and shyness to self-esteem. So these two, going up and going down here, that's what you call the indirect effect. While the total effect it's from its first word, total. The total effect is a total extent to which the outcome variable is changed by the predictor, including any indirect effect made by the mediator. So in short, total effect is this whole graph with the help of the mediator. So next, we have to explain the testing mediation. So each of these can be used as a simple regression. So in path A, we can confirm that language deficit causes shyness. So we can use it as a simple regression since we only have 2 variables presented. On the other hand, we have here the path B, wherein we can confirm that shyness causes self-esteem. Or in this study, we can conclude that shyness causes the children to have a lower self-esteem than the other children who doesn't have a language deficit. So we can say that this graph or the mediation has a negative outcome. This one is a negative outcome because of the mediator and the predictor. Lastly, we can also use simple regression in path C, wherein we can confirm that language deficit causes a lower self-esteem for the children grades 1 to 3. And in conclusion, we can say that children were measured by their language or ability to communicate. So the researchers measured the ability of the children of the students grades 1 to 3, their ability to communicate with their other peers on how they use their language. And having a language deficiency is associated with having lower self-esteem later in their lives, so thus resulting in a negative effect or path. And another theoretical claim is that children experiencing language deficit acquire shyness during interaction that lead to them having lower self-esteem. Thank you.